The letter trembled in her hands as she stood on the porch of the ranch house, the Montana wind whipping her dark hair across her face. And when the door finally opened to reveal a tall man with weathered hands and suspicious eyes, she knew her entire world was about to change forever. Wade Donovan stared at the woman before him, noting how her threadbare dress hung on her thin frame and how exhaustion had etched lines around her green eyes. She could not have been much older than 20, maybe 22 at most. He was 31 himself, and in his years running this cattle ranch outside of Miles City, Montana, he had seen plenty of unexpected visitors. But none quite like this one, appearing out of nowhere on this October morning in 1882. "Can I help you?" Wade asked, his voice gruff from disuse. He lived alone out here, had done so for the past 3 years since his father died and left him this land. The woman swallowed hard, her throat working visibly. "Are you Wade Donovan?" "I am." She thrust the letter toward him with shaking hands. "This is for you. I was told to deliver it personally and wait for your response." Wade took the envelope, noting the broken seal and the careful script of his name across the front. The handwriting made his chest tighten. He knew that writing, had not seen it in over a decade but would recognize it anywhere. His older brother Thomas had written this. "Where did you get this?" Wade demanded, his eyes snapping back to the woman. "I work at the hospital in Chicago. Your brother gave it to me before he passed 3 weeks ago. He made me promise to bring it to you myself." Her voice cracked on the last words. "Please, just read it." Wade's world tilted. Thomas was dead. The brother who had left Montana 15 years ago to seek his fortune back east, who had promised to write and never did, who their father had cursed with his dying breath for abandoning the family. Dead. With numb fingers, Wade unfolded the letter and read, "Wade, if you are reading this, I am gone. I do not expect your forgiveness for leaving all those years ago, for not writing, for letting you shoulder the burden of the ranch and Pa alone. I was a coward and a fool. I am dying, brother. The consumption has eaten away at my lungs, and the doctors give me days at most. I have no wife, no children of my own. But I do have someone who needs help, someone I swore to protect and failed. The woman who brings you this letter is named Adelaide Edwards. She is the daughter of my business partner, a man who took me in when I arrived in Chicago with nothing and gave me a chance at success. We built a shipping company together, and for a time, I was happy. I was even engaged to Adelaide's older sister, Margaret. But Jonathan Edwards, Adelaide's father, made enemies, bad men who wanted his business and did not care how they got it. 6 months ago, Jonathan was murdered. Margaret died in a fire at the office 2 months later. It was no accident. The same men are after Adelaide now and after me for trying to protect her. I am sending her to you because there is nowhere else. She has no family left, no money, nothing. These men will hunt her if she stays in Chicago. She needs to disappear, needs somewhere safe. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I left you to handle everything alone. But I am begging you, Wade, please help her. Give her work, let her earn her keep on the ranch. She is willing to work hard to do whatever needs doing. Just keep her safe, keep her alive. There is more I should tell you, more I wish I could say about all the years lost between us. I thought about coming home 1,000 times. I should have. I am sorry, brother. I am so damned sorry for everything. Please help Adelaide. Do this one thing for me and we will be even. You owe me nothing more. Your brother, Thomas Wade, read the letter twice, then a third time. His hands shook with suppressed emotion. Anger at Thomas for leaving. Grief that his brother was dead and they would never have the chance to reconcile. Guilt that some small, bitter part of him was glad Thomas had suffered. He looked up at Adelaide Edwards, really looked at her this time. She was pretty despite her haggard appearance, with high cheekbones and full lips. But what struck him most were her eyes. They held a wariness that spoke of horrors witnessed, of running and hiding and never feeling safe. "You knew my brother?" Wade asked quietly. Adelaide nodded. "He was supposed to marry my sister. After she died, he tried to help me escape Chicago. He used his last bit of strength to get me on a train west with that letter and enough money for passage. He made me swear I would come to you, that I would not stop until I found you. These men who are after you, do they know where you went?" "I do not know." Thomas was careful. "He told me to use a different name when I bought the train ticket, told me to keep moving until I got here. But I cannot be certain they did not follow." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "They are very determined." Wade folded the letter and tucked it into his shirt pocket. His mind raced through options, none of them good. He could turn her away, tell her that his brother's debts were not his own. The smart thing would be to send her on her way with what supplies she needed and forget she had ever appeared on his doorstep. But he could not. Whatever else Thomas had been, whatever mistakes he had made, he was still Wade's brother. Blood meant something out here, and this woman had traveled over 1,000 miles to deliver a dying man's last request. "You can stay," Wade said abruptly. "I need help around the ranch anyway. My hired hand quit last month, and I have been managing alone. You will work for your keep. I cannot pay you much, but you will have a roof over your head and food in your belly." The relief that flooded Adelaide's face was so profound that Wade felt something shift in his chest. When was the last time someone had looked at him like that? Like he was a miracle instead of just a hard man trying to survive in hard country. "Thank you," Adelaide breathed. "I will work hard. I promise you will not regret this." Wade was already regretting it, but not for the reasons she might think. Having a young woman on his ranch would complicate things. The nearest neighbors were miles away, and people talked. But he shoved those concerns aside and gestured for her to follow him into the house. The interior was neat but sparse, furnished with only what was necessary. Wade had never been one for decoration. He showed Adelaide to the small bedroom off the main living area, the room that had once belonged to his mother before she passed when he was 15. "You will sleep here. There is a stove in the main room for cooking. I rise at dawn and expect breakfast ready by then. Can you cook?" "Yes." Adelaide set down the small carpet bag she had been clutching. It appeared to contain everything she owned in the world. "My mother taught me before she died. I kept house for my father and sister after that." "Good. The chickens need tending morning and evening. The vegetable garden out back needs harvesting before the frost comes. Can you handle a rifle?" Adelaide paled. "I have never shot one." "Then I will teach you. Out here, you need to know how to protect yourself. Wolves, mountain lions, sometimes worse." He did not elaborate on what worse might entail, time enough for her to learn about the rougher elements that occasionally drifted through this territory. "I understand." Wade nodded curtly. "Get yourself settled. I have work to do in the barn. Dinner is at sundown." He turned to leave, then paused. "I am sorry about your father and sister and about Thomas." "Thank you," Adelaide said softly. "I am sorry too. Thomas spoke of you sometimes. He regretted leaving, regretted losing contact with you." Wade grunted noncommittally and left before the conversation could continue. He did not want to talk about Thomas, did not want to feel the complicated tangle of emotions his brother's death had stirred up. Work was what he needed. Work always helped. As Wade mucked out the stalls in the barn, he tried to focus on the familiar rhythm of physical labor. But his mind kept drifting back to the woman in his house. Adelaide. She had an educated way of speaking that suggested refinement, yet there was steel underneath her frightened exterior. She had survived the murder of her father and sister, had watched Thomas die, had traveled across the country alone to find a complete stranger. That took courage. Wade respected courage. The day passed in a blur of chores. Wade checked on his cattle grazing in the eastern pasture, repaired a section of fence that had come loose in last week's storm, and split wood for winter. When the sun began its descent toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, he returned to the house. The smell hit him first, something savory and rich that made his stomach growl. Wade could not remember the last time he had eaten a proper meal. He survived mostly on beans and salt pork, occasionally shooting a rabbit or deer for fresh meat. Adelaide stood at the stove, stirring a pot. She had changed into what must have been her only other dress, a faded blue thing that was still too thin for Montana weather. Her hair was pinned back, revealing the elegant line of her neck. "I hope you do not mind," Adelaide said when she noticed him. "I found vegetables in the garden and some dried beef in the pantry. I made a stew." "I do not mind." Wade washed his hands in the basin by the door and sat at the rough-hewn table. Adelaide served him a generous portion, then took a smaller helping for herself. The stew was delicious, better than anything Wade had made for himself in years. He ate in silence, aware of Adelaide watching him with anxious eyes, seeking his approval. "It is good," Wade said finally. "Thank you." Adelaide smiled, a real smile that transformed her entire face. "I am glad. I was worried I had used too much salt." They ate without speaking for a while, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and the clink of spoons against bowls. It was not uncomfortable, Wade realized, having another person in the house. It felt almost natural. "Tell me about the ranch," Adelaide said eventually. "How long have you been here?" "My father established this place 30 years ago, back in '52. He came west from Kentucky looking for land and opportunity. Built the house himself, started with just a few head of cattle. By the time I was born, he had a decent herd. Thomas and I grew up here learning the business. It must have been hard when Thomas left." Wade's jaw tightened. "It was. Pa never forgave him, said Thomas was chasing fool's dreams, that he had responsibilities here. They had a terrible fight before Thomas left. Lots of things said that could not be taken back. But Thomas did well in Chicago," Adelaide said gently. "He built something real. The business with my father was successful, good for him." Wade stood abruptly, carrying his bowl to the basin. He did not want to talk about this anymore. "I am going to check on the horses. You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." Adelaide nodded, understanding that she had pushed too far. "Good night, Wade." "Night." Wade escaped to the barn, where he spent an unnecessary amount of time checking on his horses and the 2 mules he used for plowing. The animals were fine, of course. He just needed space to breathe. Thomas. After all these years of silence, his brother had reached out from beyond the grave to ask for one final favor. And Wade had agreed, had brought this complicated, beautiful woman into his life. What had he been thinking? But he knew what he had been thinking. He had been thinking about family, about duty, about the code he lived by even if Thomas had not. You did not turn away someone who needed help, especially not when your own blood asked you to protect them. Wade returned to the house late, long after the lamp in Adelaide's room had gone dark. He lay in his own bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of another person in his home. The soft rustle of blankets, the creak of the bed frame. It had been so long since anyone else had lived here. Sleep was a long time coming. The next few days fell into a pattern. Wade woke at first light to find Adelaide already up, coffee made and breakfast cooking. She worked without complaint, tending the chickens, harvesting vegetables, mending his worn clothes. In the afternoons, Wade taught her to shoot, setting up targets behind the barn and showing her how to hold the rifle steady, how to breathe and squeeze the trigger rather than pull. Adelaide was a quick learner. By the end of the week, she could hit the target more often than not. Wade found himself impressed despite his determination to remain detached, because that was the problem. He could not remain detached. Adelaide was too present, too real, too fascinating. He caught himself watching her as she hung laundry on the line, her movements graceful despite the mundane task. He noticed how she hummed while she cooked, old songs from her childhood. He saw how she gentled the nervous mare in the barn, speaking softly until the animal calmed under her touch, and Adelaide seemed equally aware of him. Her eyes followed him when she thought he was not looking. She learned his preferences without being told, bringing him coffee the way he liked it, knowing when he wanted conversation and when he needed silence. It was dangerous, this growing familiarity between them. Wade reminded himself that Adelaide was here because she had nowhere else to go, because his dying brother had begged him to protect her. She was not here by choice, not really. She was running from killers, seeking sanctuary. But then there were moments that made Wade question everything. Like when Adelaide laughed at something he said, a genuine peal of joy that lit up the dreary ranch house. Or when she touched his arm to get his attention, and he felt that touch burn through his sleeve like a brand. 2 weeks after Adelaide's arrival, Wade rode into Miles City for supplies. It was a rough town, established just 7 years earlier near Fort Keogh. The streets were dusty and lined with saloons, gambling houses, and general stores catering to ranchers and soldiers. Wade conducted his business quickly, purchasing flour, sugar, and other necessities. He was loading his wagon when he noticed 2 men watching him from across the street. They were not locals. Their clothes were too fine, their faces too clean. Eastern men, out of place in this frontier town. Wade's instincts prickled. He finished loading the wagon without acknowledging their scrutiny, then climbed onto the seat and drove out of town. His hand rested on the rifle beside him. He took a longer route home, doubling back twice to see if he was being followed. He saw no one, but that did not ease his concern. Those men had been looking for something, or someone. When Wade arrived back at the ranch, he found Adelaide in the garden, kneeling in the dirt as she pulled up the last of the carrots. She looked up at his approach, smiling. Then she saw his face and the smile faded. "What is wrong?" Wade helped her to her feet, noting absently how small her hands were in his. "We need to talk. Inside." Adelaide's face went pale, but she followed him without question. In the house, Wade set down his purchases and turned to face her. "Tell me exactly what these men after you look like." "Everything you remember." Adelaide sank into a chair, her hands twisting together. "There were 2 who came to my father's office after he died. One was tall, maybe 40 years old, with gray in his hair and a scar on his left cheek. The other was younger, blonde, with cold blue eyes. They said they wanted to buy the business, but their offer was insultingly low. When my father refused to sell, when he told them he knew they were behind the attacks on his warehouses, they threatened him." "Did they have names?" "The older one was called Garrett. I do not know his first name." "The younger one, he was called Cole Sutton." Wade cursed under his breath. "I saw 2 men in Miles City today. Eastern men out of place. They were watching me. I cannot be certain it was them, but my gut says it was." Adelaide stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I should leave. I should not have come here, should not have brought this danger to your door. I will go, keep moving west. Maybe California or Oregon." "You will do no such thing." Wade's voice was sharp. "You would not last a week on your own. These men are professionals, Adelaide. If they found you here, they can find you anywhere." "Then what do you suggest?" Adelaide's voice rose, edged with desperation. I cannot hide forever. I cannot keep running. Wade paced the small room, his mind working through options. We make a stand. This is my land, my territory. I know every rock and tree for miles. If they want to come after you, let them come. We will be ready. I cannot ask you to risk your life for me. You are not asking. I am deciding. Wade stopped in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. Thomas asked me to keep you safe. I gave my word, even if only to myself. I do not break my word. Tears welled in Adelaide's eyes. Why? Why would you do this for someone you barely know? The answer came to Wade with startling clarity. Because somewhere in the past 2 weeks, Adelaide had stopped being a stranger. She had become part of the rhythm of his life, as essential as the sunrise. Because he looked forward to seeing her every morning, to hearing her voice, to watching her move through his world like she belonged there. Because he was falling in love with her. The realization struck Wade like a physical blow. He loved her. Against all sense and reason, against his determination to keep his distance, he had fallen completely and irrevocably in love with Adelaide Edwards. But he could not tell her that. Not now, maybe not ever. She was vulnerable, dependent on him for protection and survival. To declare his feelings would be to take advantage of that vulnerability. So instead, Wade said simply, because it is the right thing to do. Adelaide searched his face, looking for something Wade was careful not to reveal. Finally, she nodded. Then teach me to be ready. Teach me to fight. Wade spent the next few days preparing the ranch for trouble. He positioned rifles at strategic points around the house, showed Adelaide how to barricade the doors and windows if needed. He taught her to reload quickly, to shoot from cover, to aim for center mass rather than trying for fancy shots. Adelaide proved herself once again to be a determined student. She never complained, never hesitated. Wade saw the fear in her eyes, but he also saw her courage. She was terrified, but she would not run. She would not let those men take anything else from her. As they worked side by side, Wade felt the connection between them strengthen. There were moments of levity despite the grim preparations. Adelaide teased him about his serious nature, made him smile with observations about the chickens' personalities. Wade found himself telling her stories about growing up on the ranch, about his mother who had been so gentle and kind, about his father's gruff exterior that hid a deep well of love for his family. Tell me about Thomas, Adelaide said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sun set. What was he like as a boy? Wade was silent for a long moment. Talking about Thomas still hurt, but somehow it was easier with Adelaide. He was the dreamer, always reading books, talking about seeing the world. Pa wanted him to be practical, to focus on the ranch. But Thomas could not see himself stuck here for the rest of his life. Did you resent him for leaving? Yes, no, both, Wade sighed. I understood why he needed to go, but I needed him to stay. After he left, it was just me and Pa. Pa grew bitter, drank more. The ranch suffered because I could not manage it all alone, not as young as I was. I had to hire help and we could not always afford it. But you did manage it. You kept the ranch going. I had no choice. Adelaide touched his hand, a brief contact that sent warmth shooting up Wade's arm. You always have a choice. You chose to honor your responsibilities. That takes strength. Wade turned his hand over, capturing hers. Thomas chose to live his own life. That takes strength too. I see that now. I wish I had told him that before he died. He knew, Adelaide said softly. In the hospital, before the end, he talked about you. He said you were the strong one, the good one. He said he always felt like he was disappointing everyone, but you never disappointed anyone. I disappointed him by not understanding why he had to leave, and he disappointed you by leaving. But that is what siblings do. We love each other and disappoint each other and hopefully find our way back to forgiveness." Adelaide's voice cracked. "I wish I had one more day with Margaret, one more chance to tell her I loved her." Wade squeezed her hand. They sat in silence as the last light faded from the sky, their fingers intertwined. It was the first time they had touched beyond the brief, accidental contacts that happened during work. It felt momentous, like crossing a threshold they could not uncross. Finally, Adelaide withdrew her hand and stood. "I should go to bed. Another early morning tomorrow." "Adelaide." Wade stood too, facing her in the gathering darkness. "If those men come, I want you to promise me something." "What?" "If things go badly, if there is a chance for you to escape, you take it. You run and you do not look back. You get to the neighbors 5 miles south, the Hendersons. Tell them what happened. They will help you." "Wade, I cannot just leave you to promise me." His voice was harsh with emotion he could not quite suppress. "I need to know you will survive this, whatever happens." Adelaide's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Only if you promise me the same thing, that you will not throw your life away for mine." "I promise." It was a lie, and they both knew it. If it came down to a choice, Wade would sacrifice himself without hesitation. But Adelaide seemed willing to accept the fiction, perhaps because she needed to believe they could both survive what was coming. "Good night, Wade." "Good night." Wade watched her disappear into the house before returning his gaze to the dark landscape beyond the ranch. Somewhere out there, danger was coming. He could feel it in his bones, in the way the horses shifted restlessly in the barn, in the eerie silence of the night. He would be ready. 3 days later they came. Wade was working in the barn when he heard the sound of approaching horses, multiple riders moving with purpose. He grabbed his rifle and ran to the house, bursting through the door. "Adelaide, they are here." Adelaide appeared from the bedroom, her own rifle in hand. Her face was pale but determined. She took up position at the window Wade had designated, using the frame for cover as he had taught her. Wade moved to the front window, peering through the gap in the curtains. 4 men on horseback approached the house. 2 of them matched Adelaide's description of Garrett and Cole. The other 2 were hired guns. That much was obvious from the way they carried themselves. The riders stopped 50 yards from the house. Garrett dismounted, his movements casual and confident. He was a big man, thick through the shoulders, with the scarred face Adelaide had described. "Wade Donovan," Garrett called out. "We need to talk about the woman you are harboring." Wade opened the door but stayed behind cover, his rifle trained on Garrett. "This is private property. You are trespassing." Garrett spread his hands in a gesture of false peace. "Now, let us not be hasty. We are just here to collect what belongs to us. Adelaide Edwards is wanted for theft in Chicago. We are licensed bounty hunters, authorized to bring her back." "That is a lie." Adelaide's voice was clear and strong from inside the house. "You murdered my father and sister. You will not take me." Cole Sutton laughed, a harsh sound that set Wade's teeth on edge. "Little girl, you have been running a long time. Time to face justice." "The only justice here is the kind delivered from the barrel of this rifle," Wade said coldly. "You have 10 seconds to turn around and leave my land. After that, I start shooting." Garrett's false friendliness evaporated. "You are making a mistake, cowboy. We are 4 against 2 and you are protecting a criminal. Stand down and we will leave you alive." 1. Wade began counting. "Do not be a fool." 2. The 4 men exchanged glances. Wade saw the moment they decided to act. The 2 hired guns reached for their weapons. Wade fired, his shot catching one of the gunmen in the shoulder. The man cried out and fell from his horse. Adelaide fired simultaneously, her shot going wide but forcing the men to scatter for cover. Chaos erupted. Bullets thudded into the wooden walls of the house. Wade and Adelaide returned fire, keeping the attackers pinned behind their horses and the sparse cover of a few rocks. "The barn," Wade shouted. "They are trying to circle around to the barn." He saw Cole making a run for it, using the confusion to dash toward the barn where he could gain a better angle on the house. Wade could not get a clear shot. The man was fast and smart, zigzagging as he ran. Wade made a split-second decision. He could not let them flank the house. "Adelaide, keep them pinned down. Do not let them advance." Before she could protest, Wade threw open the back door and sprinted toward the barn. He heard Adelaide's rifle crack behind him, heard her shouting his name, but he did not stop. Wade reached the barn just as Cole disappeared inside. Wade followed, his eyes struggling to adjust to the dimmer light. The horses whinnied and stamped nervously in their stalls. Movement to his left. Wade spun and fired, but Cole was already diving behind a hay bale. The bullet punched through hay, but Wade heard no cry of pain. "You should have stayed out of this," Cole's voice drifted from the shadows. "We were not going to hurt you, but now you made it personal." Wade did not waste breath on a response. He moved deeper into the barn, using the stalls for cover, his rifle ready. Every sense was heightened, searching for the smallest clue to Cole's location. A creak overhead. Wade looked up just as Cole dropped from the hayloft, colliding with him. They went down in a tangle of limbs. Wade's rifle skittered away across the floor. Cole was strong and vicious, fighting with the desperation of a man who had nothing to lose. He landed a punch to Wade's jaw that made his ears ring. Wade responded with a blow to Cole's ribs, feeling something crack under the impact. They grappled in the dust and hay, trading brutal blows. Cole pulled a knife, slashing at Wade's arm. Wade felt the burn of the blade cutting through his shirt and skin. He grabbed Cole's wrist, slamming it against the ground until the knife fell away. Wade got his hands around Cole's throat and squeezed. Cole's face turned red, then purple. His struggles grew weaker. Finally, he went limp. Wade released him, gasping for breath. He was not a killer, did not want to be. Cole was unconscious but alive. That would have to be enough. Wade retrieved his rifle and ran back toward the house. The shooting had stopped. Had Adelaide been hurt? Terror gripped him as he burst through the door. Adelaide stood in the main room, her rifle trained on Garrett and the remaining uninjured gunman. Both men had their hands raised. Wade's shot gunman was sitting on the floor, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "I thought you were dead," Adelaide said when she saw Wade. Her voice shook. "You were gone so long. I am fine. Cole is in the barn, unconscious. What happened here?" "They tried to rush the house," Adelaide explained, her rifle never wavering. "I shot him." She indicated the wounded man. "The other one ran off when he saw his partner go down. These two surrendered when I threatened to shoot them next." Pride surged through Wade. Adelaide had defended herself, had defended their home. She was magnificent. "We need to get them into Miles City," Wade said. "Turn them over to the marshal." It took the better part of the day to secure the prisoners, collect Cole from the barn, and make the journey to town. The marshal, a grizzled man named Tom Garrett, no relation to the prisoner, listened to their story with growing interest. "Bounty hunters from Chicago, you say? I will wire the authorities there, get confirmation of their story." Marshal Garrett looked at Adelaide. "And you, miss? You running from the law?" "No, sir. My father and sister were murdered by these men. They want me dead because I witnessed their crimes." "That is quite an accusation. One I can prove," Adelaide said firmly. "Thomas Donovan worked with my father. Before he died, he documented everything. The attacks on my father's business, the threats, all of it. He sent those documents to a lawyer in Chicago, a man named Samuel Barrett. Wire him. He will confirm everything." Marshal Garrett nodded slowly. "All right. I will hold these men while I investigate. If what you say is true, they will hang for murder." He looked at Wade. "You did good work today, Donovan. Protected your home and an innocent woman." "Just doing what needed doing," Wade said gruffly. They returned to the ranch as the sun was setting, both exhausted and battered. Wade's arm throbbed where Cole had cut him. Adelaide had bruises forming on her shoulder from the rifle's recoil. Inside the house, Adelaide insisted on tending Wade's wound first. She cleaned the cut with whiskey that made Wade hiss in pain, then bandaged it with careful precision. "You could have been killed," Adelaide said quietly as she worked. "Running out there like that, going after that man alone." "I could not let him flank us. It was the only option." "You promised me you would not throw your life away." Wade caught her hand, stilling her movements. "And I did not. I am right here." Adelaide looked up at him, her green eyes swimming with tears. "I was so scared. When you ran out that door, when I heard fighting in the barn and could not help you, I thought I had lost you. You did not lose me, but I could have." Her voice broke. "And I realized in that moment that losing you would destroy me. Because somehow, without meaning to, I fell in love with you." Wade's heart stopped. "Adelaide, I know I should not feel this way. I know I am only here because Thomas asked you to protect me, that you are just being honorable, but I cannot help how I feel. I love you, Wade Donovan. I love your strength and your kindness. I love how you took in a stranger without question. I love the way you look at the land like it is part of your soul. I love," Wade kissed her. It was the only way to stop the flood of words, the only way to show her what he was feeling. He poured everything into that kiss, all his longing, all his love, all the desperate fear he had felt when he thought those men might hurt her. Adelaide kissed him back with equal fervor, her fingers tangling in his hair. They kissed like they were drowning and each other was air, like nothing else in the world mattered but this connection between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too. I have loved you almost from the first moment I saw you standing on my porch with that letter. I love your courage and your stubbornness. I love how you hum when you cook. I love how gentle you are with the animals. I love everything about you." Adelaide laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Then why did you not say anything?" "Because you were here seeking protection, not romance. I did not want you to think you owed me anything, that I expected something in return for helping you." "Fool," Adelaide said affectionately. She kissed him again, softer this time. "I would have chosen you even without all this, even if I had met you under completely different circumstances. You are everything I never knew I wanted." Wade wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. For the first time since Thomas's letter arrived, he allowed himself to imagine a future. A future with Adelaide by his side, building a life together on this land. Children running through the house, filling it with laughter. Growing old together, facing whatever challenges came their way. "Marry me," Wade said impulsively. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a few weeks, but I am certain. You are what I want, Adelaide. Today, tomorrow, for the rest of my life." Adelaide pulled back to look at him, her eyes searching his face. "Are you sure? You have only known me such a short time. What if you change your mind?" "I will not change my mind. Will you?" "Never." Adelaide smiled, radiant and beautiful. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." They kissed again, sealing the promise between them. Outside, the Montana wind howled and the first snow of winter began to fall. But inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Wade and Adelaide had never felt warmer. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Marshal Garrett's investigation confirmed everything Adelaide had told him. The lawyer in Chicago sent the documents Thomas had compiled, providing irrefutable evidence of Garrett and Cole's crimes. Both men, along with their associates, were tried and hanged for murder. Adelaide finally had justice for her father and sister. The burden she had carried for so long lifted, allowing her to grieve properly and then move forward. Wade and Adelaide were married in Miles City on a cold November morning. The ceremony was simple, attended by Marshall Garrett and a few of Wade's neighbors. Adelaide wore a new dress that Wade had bought for her, a deep green that matched her eyes. Wade wore his best suit, the one he had not taken out since his father's funeral. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, when Wade kissed his bride for the first time as her husband, he felt his life click into place. This was what he had been missing, what the ranch had been missing. Not just another set of hands to help with the work, but a partner. Someone to share the burdens and the joys. They returned to the ranch as Mr. and Mrs. Wade Donovan, ready to begin their life together. The winter was harsh, as Montana winters always were. Snow piled high around the ranch, and the temperatures dropped so low that the horses' breath froze in the air. But the house stayed warm, heated by the stove and by the love growing between Wade and Adelaide. They learned each other's rhythms, adjusted to married life. Adelaide brought beauty into the house, small touches that made it feel like a home rather than just a place to sleep. She sewed curtains for the windows, placed wildflowers in jars during the brief times they could be found, cooked meals that filled the house with delicious smells. Wade showed Adelaide the business of ranching, teaching her how to read the weather, how to doctor sick cattle, how to manage the books. She proved herself as capable with these tasks as she had with learning to shoot. But more than the practical aspects of their partnership, they discovered the depth of their emotional connection. Wade talked to Adelaide in ways he had never talked to anyone, sharing his fears and hopes. Adelaide opened up about her grief, about the trauma of losing her family, and found healing in Wade's steady, patient presence. Their physical relationship was a revelation for both of them. Adelaide had been a virgin on their wedding night, nervous and uncertain. Wade had been patient, gentle, showing her that love could be both tender and passionate. As Adelaide grew more confident, their lovemaking became intense and fulfilling, an expression of the deep bond between them. Winter eventually gave way to spring. The snow melted, revealing the brown earth beneath. Wade and Adelaide prepared for calving season, working together to bring new life into the world. It was exhausting, brutal work, but they faced it as a team. One evening in late April, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Adelaide took Wade's hand and placed it on her stomach. "I am with child," she said softly. "The baby will come in the fall, around October." Wade stared at her, his mind struggling to process her words. A baby. Their baby. He was going to be a father. Joy exploded through him, so intense it almost hurt. Wade pulled Adelaide into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world, which she was. "Are you happy?" Adelaide asked, her voice muffled against his chest. "Happy does not begin to cover it." Wade pulled back to look at her face. "You have given me everything, Adelaide. A home, a purpose, and now a child. I love you so much. I love you too." They sat together as the light faded, planning for the future. They would need to expand the house, add another bedroom. Wade would need to hire help before the baby came, someone to assist with the heavier ranch work so Adelaide could rest. As the months passed and Adelaide's belly swelled with their child, Wade found himself in awe of his wife. She continued to work as much as she could, refusing to be treated as fragile. She glowed with health and happiness, more beautiful than ever. The baby came in early October, right on schedule. The labor was long and difficult, attended by the neighbor woman, Mrs. Henderson, who had experience with births. Wade paced outside the bedroom, terrified by every cry of pain Adelaide made. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he heard the thin wail of a newborn. Mrs. Henderson opened the door, smiling. "You have a son, Mr. Donovan, a healthy boy. And your wife did wonderfully." Wade rushed into the room. Adelaide lay propped against pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face exhausted but radiant. In her arms she held a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. "Come meet your son," Adelaide said. Wade approached slowly, almost afraid to breathe. Adelaide pulled back the blanket, revealing a small red face, eyes squinted shut, tiny fists waving. The baby had a shock of dark hair, just like Adelaide. "He is perfect," Wade whispered. He reached out a finger and the baby's hand closed around it with surprising strength. Wade felt his heart expand impossibly larger. His son, his boy, what should we name him? Adelaide asked. Wade thought for a moment. "Thomas, after my brother, if that is all right with you." Adelaide's eyes filled with tears. "It is more than all right. Thomas Wade Donovan, it is perfect." They named their son for the man who had brought them together, whose dying wish had given them both a chance at happiness. It felt right, felt like completing a circle. Little Thomas was a good baby, rarely fussy, with Adelaide's green eyes and Wade's serious expressions. Wade was amazed by how much love he felt for this tiny person, how fierce his protectiveness was. He understood, for the first time, what his own father must have felt. The drive to provide, to protect, to build something lasting for the next generation. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Wade hired a young man from town to help with the heavy work, which freed him to spend more time with Adelaide and Thomas. They added sheep to their cattle, diversifying their income. Adelaide suggested planting a larger garden and selling vegetables in town, which proved profitable. Years passed, marked by the changing seasons and the milestones of their son's life. Thomas took his first steps, spoke his first words, grew from a baby into a curious, energetic toddler. When Thomas was 3, Adelaide became pregnant again. This time, she carried the baby with more confidence, knowing what to expect. In the spring of 1886, she gave birth to a daughter they named Margaret Rose, after Adelaide's sister and Wade's mother. Margaret was everything Thomas was not: loud, demanding, with a fierce temper that made both parents laugh even as it exhausted them. But she was also sweet and loving, quick to give hugs and kisses. Wade watched his family grow with profound gratitude. Every day, he thought about how close he had come to never having this. If Thomas had not sent Adelaide to him, if he had turned her away, if those men had succeeded in their attack, any of those things could have prevented this happiness. One evening, when Thomas was 5 and Margaret was 2, Wade stood in the doorway of the house watching his family. Adelaide sat on the floor with the children, reading them a story. Thomas listened with rapt attention while Margaret climbed over her mother, more interested in causing mischief than in the book. Adelaide looked up and caught Wade watching. She smiled at him, that brilliant smile that still made his heart skip a beat after all these years. "Come join us," she called. Wade settled beside his family, pulling Margaret into his lap when she immediately climbed on him. Thomas snuggled against his other side. Adelaide continued reading, her voice bringing the story to life. This was everything Wade had ever wanted, even when he had not known to want it. This warmth, this love, this sense of belonging. His children's laughter, his wife's presence, the ranch that had been his burden now transformed into his joy because he had people to share it with. Later, after the children were asleep, Wade and Adelaide sat together on the porch as they did most evenings. The Montana sky was clear and filled with stars, the air warm with the promise of summer. "You ever regret it?" Wade asked. Leaving Chicago, coming out here to the middle of nowhere." Adelaide laughed softly. "This is not nowhere. This is home. And no, I have never regretted it. Not for a single moment. You saved my life, Wade. Not just from those men, but from a future of loneliness and grief. You gave me a reason to live again. You did the same for me. I did not realize how alone I was until you arrived. I was just going through the motions, working and surviving but not really living. And now I am living. Really, truly living." Wade took Adelaide's hand, lacing their fingers together. "I love you more every day. I did not think that was possible, but it keeps happening. I love you too. Always." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. In the barn, the horses shifted and nickered softly. From the children's room, Wade heard Margaret cry out briefly in her sleep, then settle again. Everything was as it should be. Everything was right in Wade Donovan's world. As the years continued to pass, the Donovan Ranch became known throughout the region as one of the most successful in Montana. Wade and Adelaide worked side by side, equal partners in every sense. They faced droughts and harsh winters, market fluctuations, and the occasional cattle thief. But they faced it all together, their bond only strengthening with each challenge overcome. Thomas grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, but with his mother's quick mind and compassion. Margaret was brilliant and headstrong, determined to prove she could do anything her brother could do. Wade and Adelaide had 2 more children as the years went on, another boy named Daniel, and finally a daughter they called Rose, giving Margaret the middle name to Rose's first name. The house expanded to accommodate their growing family, rooms added on one at a time. What had once been a lonely bachelor's dwelling became a place of laughter and love, always full of noise and activity. Wade taught his sons the ranching business, passing on the knowledge his own father had given him. Adelaide ensured all the children were educated, teaching them herself and later hiring a tutor to come out from town. Their children would have choices, would not be limited by lack of education or opportunity. On their 10th anniversary, Wade took Adelaide into Miles City for a rare night away from the ranch and children. The older kids were deemed responsible enough to watch the younger ones for one evening. They had dinner at the hotel restaurant, a luxury they rarely indulged in. Adelaide wore a new dress, deep blue that brought out her eyes. Her hair had a few strands of silver now, earned through years of hard work and raising children. Wade thought she had never been more beautiful. 10 years, Adelaide mused over dessert. It feels like both an eternity and no time at all. I know what you mean. Wade reached across the table to take her hand. Best 10 years of my life. Mine too, though I will admit I never imagined my life would turn out this way. When I was a girl in Chicago, I thought I would marry some businessman, live in a fine house in the city, attend parties and theaters. You miss that life. Adelaide shook her head firmly. Not even a little. That life was never really mine. It was my father's life, my sister's life. This life, the one we built together, this is mine. This is ours. I would not trade it for anything. They walked through Miles City after dinner, Wade's arm around Adelaide's waist. The town had grown significantly since Adelaide first arrived. There were more stores now, more families settling in the area. Montana had become a state just the year before, in 1889, bringing more development to the region. But the basic character of the place remained the same. It was still the frontier, still a place where people came to build something new, to escape the past or chase a dream. Wade understood why his brother Thomas had felt the need to leave, to seek his fortune elsewhere. But he also knew with absolute certainty that he himself belonged here. This land was in his blood, part of his soul. And Adelaide, who had come from such a different world, had made this land part of herself too. She had adapted and thrived, becoming as much a Montana woman as any who had been born here. They returned to the ranch late that night to find everything peaceful. The children were all asleep, Thomas having managed his responsibilities well. Wade and Adelaide went to their own bedroom, closing the door on the world for a few precious hours. They made love with the practiced ease of longtime partners who knew exactly how to please each other. But there was nothing routine about it. Every time Wade touched Adelaide, every time he looked into her eyes and saw the love there, it felt new and miraculous. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Adelaide said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For everything. For taking me in when I had nowhere else to go. For protecting me. For loving me. For giving me this life, these children, this home. For being exactly who you are." Wade kissed her forehead. "I should be thanking you. You brought light into my life when I did not even realize I was living in darkness. You made me understand what it means to truly be alive. Then I suppose we saved each other. I suppose we did." They drifted off to sleep wrapped in each other's arms, content in a way that only comes from knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be. The years rolled on, bringing changes and challenges. Thomas, their eldest, married a woman from town when he was 23, bringing her to live on the ranch. Wade and Adelaide expanded the house yet again, creating a separate living area for the young couple. When Thomas and his wife had their first child, making Wade and Adelaide grandparents, it felt like the natural progression of life. Margaret shocked everyone by deciding she wanted to become a doctor. It was an unusual ambition for a woman, but Adelaide supported her daughter fiercely. They sent Margaret east to medical school, funding her education from the ranch's profits. When Margaret returned years later with her degree, she opened a practice in Miles City, serving the community and making her parents proud. Daniel took to ranching like a duck to water, showing the same natural affinity for the land that Wade had. He expanded their operations, breeding horses in addition to cattle and sheep. Rose, the youngest, had her mother's head for business and handled the financial side of the ranch operations, ensuring they stayed profitable even during difficult times. Wade and Adelaide watched their children grow and thrive with satisfaction. They had built something lasting, something that would continue after they were gone. The ranch would stay in the family, passed down through generations. One autumn evening, when Wade was 58 and Adelaide was 49, they took a rare evening ride together. The children were all grown and managing their own lives, leaving Wade and Adelaide with a taste of the quiet they had once known. They rode to the top of a hill that overlooked the ranch, the same hill where Wade used to come as a boy to escape his chores. From here, you could see the house and barns, the pastures with their grazing animals, the creek that wound through the property. "Look at all we built," Adelaide said softly. "It is amazing, is it not?" "It is. But you know what amazes me most?" Wade turned in his saddle to look at his wife. The setting sun caught her hair, now more silver than dark, and painted her face in shades of gold. "That I still love you as much as I did the day we married. More even. I did not think it was possible to love someone more as time went on, but you prove me wrong every single day." Adelaide's eyes grew misty. "Oh, Wade, you are going to make me cry. Good tears, I hope. The best tears." She guided her horse closer so she could reach out and touch his face. "I feel the same way. You are the best decision I ever made, even though it was not really a decision at all. It was fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it. We were meant to find each other. Because of Thomas. Yes, he brought us together, even in death. I wish he could have known what his letter led to. I wish he could have met our children, seen what became of the lost girl he sent to you." Maybe he knows. Wade was not usually one for sentimentality, but he wanted to believe it. Maybe Thomas is watching, seeing that his last act of kindness created all of this. They sat on their horses as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. This land, this life, this love, it was everything. It was more than enough. It was perfect. Wade and Adelaide returned to the house as darkness fell. Inside, they found Thomas Jr. waiting for them, his face concerned. "Pa, there is something I need to talk to you about." Wade's stomach tightened with worry. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong, but I have been thinking, and I wanted to discuss it with you before making any decisions." Thomas took a deep breath. "Sarah and I want to build our own house, not far, just on the eastern section of the property. We have 3 children now, and it is getting cramped sharing space. I want to give my family their own home." Wade felt a pang at the thought of his son and grandchildren moving out, even if only a short distance away. But he understood. He and Adelaide had been fortunate to have Thomas and his family living with them as long as they had. "Of course," Wade said. "That land is yours. Build wherever you like." Thomas smiled with relief. "Thank you, Pa. I will still be here every day working the ranch. This will always be home." "But Sarah needs her own kitchen, her own space." "I understand. Your mother and I will help however we can." After Thomas left, Adelaide slipped her arm through Wade's. "Our nest is emptying." "It is. How do you feel about that?" Adelaide considered the question. "Nostalgic, a little sad, but also excited. We will have more time together, just the 2 of us. It has been years since we had that." Wade pulled her close. "That is true. Maybe we should take a trip, see some of the country we have never visited." "I would like that, as long as we always come home to Montana. Always." They built Thomas and Sarah's house the following spring, a project that involved the whole family. It was smaller than the main house, but comfortable, positioned to take advantage of the view of the mountains. When it was finished and Thomas's family moved in, Wade felt the bittersweet ache of watching his children become fully independent adults. But Adelaide had been right. Having the house to themselves again was not sad. It was like a second honeymoon, a chance to focus on each other without the constant demands of children. They did take that trip, traveling by train to Denver and then to San Francisco, seeing the ocean for the first time. It was an adventure, exciting and new. But they were both glad to return to Montana, to the ranch and the life they knew. Wade and Adelaide settled into the rhythm of their older years. Wade still worked the ranch, though he left more of the heavy labor to Thomas and Daniel. Adelaide tended her garden, preserved food for winter, and doted on her growing number of grandchildren. They had achieved something rare and precious, a love that lasted, that grew stronger rather than weaker with time. They had built a family, a legacy, a life worth living. On their 20th anniversary, their children threw them a party. The whole community came out to celebrate Wade and Adelaide Donovan, who had become pillars of the Miles City area. There were speeches and toasts, music and dancing, more food than could possibly be eaten. But the moment Wade treasured most came late in the evening, when he and Adelaide slipped away from the crowd for a few minutes alone. They stood in the darkness outside the barn, just the 2 of them, and Wade wrapped his arms around his wife. 20 years, Adelaide said, echoing her words from 10 years earlier. "Somehow it keeps getting better." "That is because we keep choosing each other every single day." Wade kissed the top of her head. "I choose you today, and I will choose you tomorrow, and every day after that for as long as I draw breath. And I choose you, always and forever." They returned to the party hand in hand, ready to celebrate with the people they loved. The night was filled with joy and laughter, with the warmth of family and community. Wade looked around at all the faces, his children and their spouses, his grandchildren, his neighbors and friends, and felt deeply grateful. All of this had started with a letter. With his dying brother's final request, with a frightened woman standing on his porch asking for help, Wade had helped her, and in doing so, had saved himself. Adelaide had brought him back to life in ways he never could have imagined. She had turned his house into a home, his solitary existence into a life filled with love. As the years continued to pass, as Wade and Adelaide grew old together, they never forgot that. They never took for granted the miracle of having found each other. Every sunrise they watched together, every meal they shared, every quiet evening on the porch, it was all a gift. Wade died in his sleep at the age of 73. Adelaide beside him as she had been for over 40 years. He went peacefully, his last sight in this world his wife's face, his last words a whispered, "I love you." Adelaide lived another 5 years after Wade's death, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She never remarried, never even considered it. Wade had been her one true love, and she was content to wait until she could join him again. When Adelaide died at 78, she was laid to rest beside Wade in the family cemetery on the hill overlooking the ranch. Their graves were marked with simple headstones that bore their names, dates, and a single inscription: "Together always." The ranch continued on through their descendants, each generation adding their own chapter to the story Wade and Adelaide had begun. But the foundation remained the same, the love that had started with a letter, that had grown through hardship and triumph, that had created something lasting and beautiful. And sometimes, when the wind blew just right across the Montana plains, when the sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, the family members who lived on the ranch swore they could feel Wade and Adelaide's presence, watching over the land they had loved, together, as they had always been, as they would always be. The letter that had brought them together had yellowed with age, but it was preserved carefully by the family, passed down as a treasured heirloom. Future generations would read Thomas Donovan's words and learn the story of how their family began. How a rancher found a woman standing at his door with a letter, and how its contents brought him home to a life and a love he never could have anticipated. It was a story of courage and redemption, of second chances and fate. But most of all, it was a love story. The kind that transcended time and circumstance, that proved love could bloom even in the harshest of conditions. Wade and Adelaide Donovan had found each other against all odds, and they had built something extraordinary. Their love story became legend in Miles City, Montana, told and retold until it took on the quality of myth. But to those who had known them, who had witnessed their devotion firsthand, it was simply the truth. They had loved each other completely, faithfully, passionately. They had raised a family, built a legacy, and lived a life that mattered. And when their time on earth was done, they had left behind not just property and possessions, but a testament to the power of love. The ranch stood for generations, a monument to Wade and Adelaide's partnership. The house they had expanded room by room to accommodate their growing family still sheltered their descendants. The land they had worked together still produced cattle and horses and crops. Their great-great-grandchildren walked the same paths they had walked, looked out at the same mountains, breathed the same Montana air. And the story of how it all began with a letter, a desperate woman, and a rancher who chose kindness over caution lived on. It was told at family gatherings, shared with new generations, kept alive through the years, because some love stories deserve to be remembered. Some love stories change everything, creating ripples that extend far beyond the two people at the center. Wade and Adelaide's love had done that. It had created a family, a legacy, a testament to what was possible when two people found each other and chose to build a life together. Their story had a perfect ending, not because there were no struggles or sorrows, but because they faced everything together. They had loved each other through joy and hardship, through youth and old age, until death parted them. And even death could not truly separate them, for they lived on in the hearts of those they had touched, in the land they had nurtured, in the family they had created. The Donovan Ranch remained a beacon in Miles City, Montana, well into the 20th century and beyond. It survived economic depressions and world wars, droughts and floods, always adapting but never losing its essential character. Because the foundation Wade and Adelaide had laid was strong enough to weather any storm. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set over the Montana plains in brilliant shades of orange and gold, when the wind whispered through the grass, and the cattle lowed softly in the distance, those who lived on the ranch felt it the peace, the rightness, the sense of home that Wade and Adelaide had created all those years ago. Their love story had ended, as all love stories must. But what they had built together would never end. It would continue, generation after generation, a lasting testimony to the power of love, courage, and choosing each other every single day. And that was the greatest gift Wade and Adelaide Donovan left behind, not just the land or the house or the family name, but the example of what love could be. Real, lasting, transformative love that changed everything it touched. The letter that brought them together had been a message of desperation, a dying man's plea for help, but it had become so much more. It had been the beginning of something beautiful, something precious, something that would last far beyond the lives of the two people who had started it all. Wade had found a woman standing at his door with a letter, and its contents had brought him home, not just to the ranch he had always lived on, but to himself, to the life he was meant to live, to the love he was meant to find. And Adelaide had found her sanctuary, her second chance, her happily ever after in the arms of a Montana rancher who had taken her in and given her everything. Together, they had written their own story, one that would be told and remembered for generations to come. A story of love in the Wild West, of two people who found each other against all odds and built something extraordinary. It was a story with a perfect ending, not because nothing bad ever happened, but because through it all they had each other. And that had been enough, more than enough. It had been everything.